Once upon a time, there was a teeny tiny woman who lived in a teeny tiny house in a teeny tiny village. And one morning she woke up and she put on her teeny tiny bonnet and she went for a walk. She walked along a teeny tiny road and came to a teeny tiny gate, and she opened the teeny tiny gate and entered a teeny tiny graveyard. And in the teeny tiny graveyard was a teeny tiny grave, and on the teeny tiny grave was sitting a teeny tiny bone. So the teeny tiny woman looked at the teeny tiny bone, and she said in her teeny tiny voice, "That bone would be good in my teeny tiny soup." So she picked up the teeny tiny bone and she put it into her teeny tiny pocket, and away she went through the teeny tiny gate, along the teeny tiny road, into the teeny tiny village, and back to the teeny tiny house. By this point, the teeny tiny woman was a teeny tiny bit tired, so she went up to her teeny tiny room, and she took the teeny tiny bone and put it into a teeny tiny cupboard, and then she got into her teeny tiny bed, and she took the teeny tiny covers and she pulled them over her teeny tiny head, and she went to sleep. But before long, the teeny tiny woman was awakened by a teeny tiny voice coming from the teeny tiny cupboard, and the teeny tiny voice said, "Give me my bone." Well, the teeny tiny woman was a teeny tiny bit frightened, and she pulled the teeny tiny covers more firmly over her teeny tiny head, and she cuddled down into her teeny tiny bed, and she went back to sleep. But again, she was awakened by the teeny tiny voice coming from the teeny tiny cupboard, and the teeny tiny voice said, a teeny tiny bit louder, "Give me my bone." Well, the teeny tiny woman was a teeny tiny bit more frightened, and she pulled the teeny tiny covers even more firmly over her teeny tiny head, and she cuddled down even more firmly into her teeny tiny bed, and again she went back to sleep. But for a third time, she was awakened by the teeny tiny voice in the teeny tiny cupboard, saying a teeny tiny bit louder, "Give me my bone." And the teeny tiny woman was a teeny tiny bit more frightened, and she drew the teeny tiny covers down from her teeny tiny face, and she stretched out an arm towards the teeny tiny cupboard. And the teeny tiny woman said, in her loudest, teeny tiny voice, "Take it!" Happy Halloween.